just a few announcements. There's a small change in schedule. The tea will be at 10:30 instead of 11:15 because then we'll have two lectures before tea and comfortable. Okay. Sorry about this little delay. We had some glitch projection on this. And so the chairperson of the morning session is Sanjay Kaushika. So I request Sanjay to take it.
So we will get started without much ado. Our first speaker is Dr. Kaushik Manzoor, who was with me the last organizer of the summer workshop. And today's talk span all the way from human subjects to vertebrates. So let's start with the problems we will take.
So there is very little room up front. Sorry for the delay in setting up. Okay, so I'm going to talk from synchronization study in schizophrenia, but basically I'll be talking on phase synchronization. And why this study is important, because there is a very famous problem in cognitive neuroscience that is called binding problem. So binding problem basically studies different parts of the brain working together in order to make the percept of the whole. When we are resolving that into different features, for example, one person that his voice is coming, his face is being seen. To put them together as a single entity of one person, we need to put the tasks performed by different parts of the brain into one, and that is roughly the binding problem. So here we are, phase synchronization is one very convenient way to study the binding problem in quantitative.
So this is one snapshot of the video synchronization. Actually, this type of snapshots will come as a video sequence later on. So here what we did, we have taken the 62 channel EEG of the whole head and divided it into left and right hemisphere. And we earmarked the channel by name, so that you don't need to see the location on a graph. You can just understand where the channels are. And then each of the square of the matrix actually in a color-coded manner shows the synchronization and level of synchronization. That is, it is basically Hilbert phase synchronization, and we have a Hilbert phase synchronization where you are introducing that the normalized Hilbert phase synchronization, which is measuring the entropy in a 0 to 1 scale. So you can see the synchronization, how in this particular snapshot it is appearing channel wise in the two different hemispheres. Next slide. So here we have considered the pairwise phase synchronization. Of course, these are different signals, not the EEG, but a different signal. Here you can see graphically the pairwise phase synchronization, that is between channel 1 and 2, 2 and 3, and 3 and 1. And on the bottom right panel, you see the average phase synchronization across all the 3 channel pairs. These we actually projected in a color-coded manner and played them as a sequence of video. And video is over the time. So here, Hilbert transformation and instantaneous phase. So this is Hilbert transformation, and this is the instantaneous phase on the right. So these we have done for each channel, and this graph is actually giving you an idea what Hilbert transformation is. Actually, this is the function with which you need to convolute the signal with, and you are doing it for each of the channel, and then you are taking the channel pairs, and for each channel pair at each time instance, you are just taking the subtraction of the two phases at that particular time point. So this is exactly what I told. Phi 1 2 is phi 1 is channel 1, the phase from channel 1. Phi 2 is phase from channel 2 at that particular instance t, and this phi 1 2 is the subtraction, and S12 WT is actually the window, because when you are taking the Hilbert transformation, you need to take it in a window. You just can't take it in a single time point. So that's how we are determining the phase synchronization across the whole window. It is coming one time in the whole window. So this is the mathematical expression for that. Now what we did, this is the methodical part. Now what we did, we conducted experiments. Experiment is a cross-modal task. So cross-modal task here is phase and Boyles. Okay. So our study is actually on schizophrenia patients, patients with schizophrenia. There we had 5 patients with schizophrenia and 5 normal control, and we actually interested to study the visual and auditory hallucination task. So here what we did, we showed both the subjects, I mean, as patients with schizophrenia as well as normal control. We showed them male face and then played male voice. We showed them female face and played female voice. We showed them male face and played female voice. We showed them male face and played female face and played male voice. And in some cases, we just played no face, no voice. So how the subjects perform in these different tasks, that's what I mean, we tried to study, and it was a single trial study. Each of these modes had 250 trials, total 250 trials performed by each of the subjects, and out of these 250 trials, all these 5 kinds of trials appeared roughly in equal number. So this is the schematic diagram of the stimulus presentation and then action. The subjects were asked to tap some button to indicate that what they are seeing. So and when there was no face, no voice, just I mean on the computer there was a fixation cross. Yeah, probably it will not come. The videos are already there. You minimize it and go to the video. Yeah, first one. Just notice how synchronization is changing. Actually, this is for the entire duration of the trial. Sorry, is it a single trial? This is single trial, yes. for first 2060 milliseconds, there was just fixation cross. I mean, there was no phase, no voice, no stimulus was presented. There was just fixation cross. And that at the time of presenting the fixation cross, sometimes you see the synchronization is going very high. Can you go back to the video? You see the synchronization is going high, very high sometimes. This part there was no stimulus as part of the experiment was presented, just fixation cross. Because the whole area, large part of the brain was working to concentrate on that fixation cross and probably try to understand that. That's why a large part of the parietal and frontal cortex, occipital, parietal, and frontal cortex, they are working in synchrony. That's what you can see. Can you hold this cursor and back it? The one that's moving on? Yeah. Or that part? Yeah. Okay. Here the synchronization is pretty high. That is because of that. Just go to the other video. This one. Yes, it. Yeah. You see that perhaps you notice that this is a video from schizophrenia patient. The earlier video that was from a normal surgery. So in the video with patient, patient with schizophrenia, you can notice that large part of the brain, they are working in synchrony, and the amount of synchrony is pretty deep. Very close to one. You see, very close to one here. The reason is, the way we try to understand it is that because of the pathological condition, maybe the patient with schizophrenia, the patients with schizophrenia, this we have seen across most of the patients, not all. One showed quite normal-like synchronization profile. That synchronization was not that high, but in 4 other patients, what we observed is that the larger part of the brain working synchronously, and the value of synchronization is pretty high. This is because, the way we try to understand it is that because of this pathological condition of the brain, the larger part of the brain are being employed and greater efforts are being made in order to process the same task which is done more effortlessly by a normal brain. That's how we try to understand. But lot more subjects need to be tested for reaching a more definitive conclusion. We had just five patients and 5 health controls. So, yeah. Go to the next slide. Next one. Next, what we did, we are interested to study that in an ensemble that is where more than 2 channels are involved, how the ensemble synchronization is evolving. So this is a measure that we define. This is basically nothing but Frobenius norm in matrix algebra. So A is a matrix. Here the matrix is the synchronization matrix, where ijth entry is giving you the phase synchronization between ith and jth channel. So we have taken this one, the norm of the whole matrix has been defined this way, and actually we have taken P equal to 2, so that is the Frobenius norm. We have taken actually P equal to 2, and we have determined the gamma this way. Just is our measure is the gamma, okay, where we have taken P equal to 2. Capital A has been defined as it is defined above for P equal to 2, and then N is the number of channels, and this actually we measure gamma this way because this gives you a norm between 0 and 1 for the ensemble. And next one. So this is single trial ensemble synchronization. What we did here is we noted down the response latency. Okay, so according to response latency, we organize the trials from bottom to top. This blue line to the middle, it is giving you the response latency time. 0 is the point where the stimulus is being presented. 0 is the point where the stimulus is being presented, and this is the response latency. The subject is responding about what he or she is observing by pressing a button, and the response latency is going. I mean, trials have been organized in such a way that higher response latency trials are above, and shorter response latency trials are below. And here, I mean, this is the trial number. So we analyzed 25 trials, and from minus 200 milliseconds to 1800 milliseconds after the stimulus onset. Okay, and at each point we have determined the Hilbert phase synchronization, ensemble Hilbert phase synchronization, and put it there in color coded form. So this is for left hemisphere, this is for left hemisphere, and this is for right hemisphere. Here we have calculated the ensemble synchronization and just put it as a graph for left hemisphere and for right hemisphere. This is the blue one is for normal control, and the red one is for schizophrenia patients. Here also quantitatively you can see the schizophrenia patients synchronization level is slightly higher. And usually what you observe is that phase synchronization on the right hemisphere for both the normal controls and schizophrenia patients slightly more than the left hemisphere. That is because of right hemisphere actually predominantly process the visual input and left the auditory input. And when we are presented with both visual and auditory stimuli, our brain tends to concentrate more on the visual stimulus rather than on the auditory stimulus. Here we analyzed some time frequency, analyze the signals, each one of them in time frequency domain. So this is event related spectral perturbation. This is basically what we are taking. We are taking the spectrum, the Fourier spectrum of each of the channels, of each of the subjects, and across the average trial, the trial average signal, and there, this is the channel position, and this is the Fourier spectrum of that particular channel. Okay. So here we see that this is for normal control, and this is for schizophrenia patient. So we generally observe lot more power at beta range, upper alpha and lower beta than the schizophrenia patients. this we have observed across the whole population. And here it is intertrial coherence. Intertrial coherence is actually there is a paper by Scott McCabe and Arnold Taylor in 2004. They have defined it as for each trial they are can you open the video? That one. This one. So this is the intertrial coherence, where F is where FKT is the Fourier spectrum. This is the Fourier transformation associated with the kth frequency, and T is the time. Sorry, F is the frequency and K is the trial number. Sorry, F is the frequency and K is the trial number. Yeah. So this expression we calculated for each of the channels, and we got the intertrial coherence. So roughly when that they are going to perform the task, that at that time the intertrial coherence is going pretty high. That is both for the schizophrenia patient as well as the normal patient. There is not much difference between intertrial coherence. Actually, we had plenty of trials. What we did, we selected the trial as we have taken the mean latency across all the trials and taken the standard deviation, and we have selected the trials where the latency occurred between the mean minus standard deviation to mean plus standard deviation. The trial performed by each of the subjects that fail in this duration, we have only chosen those trials. The trials which fail outside that range, we didn't choose those trials, because our argument was that if it is too quick, then might be it's an arbitrary case. If it is too much delayed, maybe the subject was not sure what he or she has seen is just arbitrarily pressing the button. So those trials we eliminated, and we have taken only those trials which fell between the mean minus standard deviation plus the mean plus standard deviation. Congruent means when we are seeing the face and hearing the voice from the same gender, and incongruent trials are those which are where the face and voice they are from different gender, and neutral are those where there is no face, no voice. So after that, what we did, we put all these things together in order to separate out automatically by some machine learning algorithm. Automatically separate out that trials which belong to the schizophrenic patients and trials which are from normal. So what we did, we used that logistic regression classifier, and our feature space was extremely small. I mean, only 3-dimensional feature space, and this 3-dimensional feature space actually gave remarkable result. Usually, in pattern recognition, feature space dimension happens to be very high, usually. But in our case, we were able to reduce the dimensionality of the feature space remarkably. Just three dimensions were there. So ensemble right hemispheric synchronization that I explained, ensemble left hemispheric synchronization that also I explained, and response latency. just these three features. Take these three features and for each of the trials performed by each of the subjects, and then run the logistic regression across the feature space, and you get the separation. So this is actually two-dimensional projection of three-dimensional feature space. So crossing patient with schizophrenia square is something. So these are color actually signify different patients or different subjects. So you don't care about the colors. You just see the shape of the points. If it is a square, then it belongs to a normal control. If it is a cross, then it's a schizophrenia patient. So you see that this is quite mixed, and we ran logistic regression of this feature space, and we could separate out the trials, each single trial, with 70% accuracy, that whether this trial is from a patient with schizophrenia or from a normal control. To the next. So the previous one was with the incongruent stimulus, and the next one is with congruent stimulus. So in both the cases, the separation was pretty good. To the next one, yeah. That is neutral stimulus. You see that normal control and schizophrenia patients, their points are quite intermingled, quite high intermingled. So in this case, separation is very difficult. We came up with much lesser accuracy in this case. The next one. Yeah. So that is our result of accuracy. Single trial results, stimulus type, congruent, and training set accuracy. Actually, what we did, logistic regression is a kind of classifier whose parameters are to be fixed by running it on a class of training sets. Okay, and then once your parameters are fixed, you run it on the test case. So the intra trial set we divided into 65%, 35% separation. 65% is the 65% trials that we used as training set, and then remaining 35% we used as test set, and on 65% we trained our classifier. Whatever parameter values that have been set, those were used to classify the remaining 35% of the trials. So, yeah. So this is the single trial level, and this is the subject level. So single trial means by logistic regression, we assigned a probability score to each of the trial. If the probability score is greater than 0.5, then the trial has been classified as belonging to a schizophrenia patient, and if it is less than equal to 0.5, then it has been classified as a trial belonging to a normal control subject. And then from each subject, we have taken all the single trial probability scores and then averaged them across the trials. If that average happens to be 0.5 or more, more than 0.5, then that particular subject has been classified as a patient with schizophrenia. If that happens to be less than equal to 0.5, then that particular subject has been classified as a normal control. So here our accuracy is 0.5. And I just I just forgot to mention that the range in which we took our analysis is 30 to 40 Hz, because phase synchronization has to be within certain frequency band. And the narrower is the frequency band, the more accurate your result is. So we have specifically chosen the lower gamma range, 30 to 40 hertz. So these are some of the statistics. Anyway, the important one is the 0.9. I mean, for each subject level, with 0.9 probability, we could identify that the subject, whether the subject is schizophrenic or not. Here we organized the same according to duration of illness months. So for healthy control subjects, it's that. For schizophrenia subjects, we had 5 patients data. One had, the signal was collected 6 months after the disease onset. Another subject 120 months after the disease onset. Another subject 36 months after the disease onset, and 3 months after the disease onset, 24 months after the disease onset. So for congruent trial, I mean where the accuracy is much better, for congruent trial, here you see after 6 months that the score for each patient coming to 0.45. That is very close to 0.5. The higher the duration is, I mean when the subject is suffering from schizophrenia for 12 years and after that the signal has been collected, the score is going to 0.75. After 3 years it is 0.6. After 3 months it's 0.5. That is it's really exceptional. And after 24 months it's 0.7. So we need to test more subjects, of course, to ascertain whether the score that we are assigned, whether that score goes up with the progress of the disease. This is the difference. Actually, this paper is under review in NeuroImage. So that is the work I presented. Any questions?
Time for a couple of quick questions.
Yeah, actually, so you looked at your three-dimensional classifier. One of the parameters was response time. It looked to me that response time was the one that discriminated the data the best. So can you tell me how much of your 70% accuracy are due to response time? How much
That we
due
did
to
test. That we did test on one. Response time in schizophrenia patients, the response time is slightly more. That is correct. But it is not uniform. Some patients, their response time is actually better than the normal control. So when you are coming at single subject level, that you are getting 0.9 accuracy into response time, probably that assertion is not true.
But you did not try either only response time or only the EG parameters for classification?
That we did.
Okay.
Thank you for mentioning.
Interesting.
All right, in that case, we should thank the speaker.